So, anyone out there heard of the phrase "the moment of the whirlwind"? It's a time during a campaign where suddenly all the old rules are out the window. New political ground has suddenly opened up in a kind of unexpected or dramatic way, and things that seemed impossible all of a sudden now seem possible. So, think about when the Berlin Wall fell. One day it was this wall that had been there for 30 years. It seemed like it would never move, and the next it was being torn down. Or the Arab Spring, suddenly the rule of dictators was falling apart. Or the Black Lives Matter summer, suddenly defund the police was being, talked about and actually being seriously considered by politicians for the first time around the country. And what triggers these moments is somewhat unpredictable. The murder of George Floyd catalyzed a global movement. But Edward Bronstein, a black man killed by police just 2 months before, whilst also screaming, "I can't breathe," did not. A march about inequality in Washington, D.C. may go totally unnoticed, but Occupy Wall Street becomes this global movement. You've got Greta Thunberg is another good example. She could have easily gone unnoticed, sitting outside the Swedish parliament. And so we can try and make one of these trigger events that leads to a moment of the whirlwind happen. And we should try and do that. But we should be aware that there's a good chance that it won't work. But there is something we can do, and that's be prepared, be ready for the moment so that we can harness it when it comes. One critique I've heard of the Occupy movement is that it wasn't ready to lead a global movement. It had to figure out its policies and its ideals on the ground, like literally with thousands of people sitting in circles with no microphones, no leaders. One interesting example is with Rosa Parks. A few months before Rosa refused to move to the back of the bus, there was another woman, Claudette Colvin, who refused to give up her seat. But the local movement decided it wasn't ready to launch its boycott. And also the movement felt that Colvin wasn't the right person to be the face of the movement. So they were patient and waited for the right person, Rosa Parks, who they viewed as a more upstanding citizen, to put on this pedestal to come along. So, these trigger events or these moments of the whirlwind are kind of shapeable, but they're really not altogether predictable. There's this Milton Friedman quote that says, "Only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. That, I believe, is our basic function, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable." So Milton Friedman was a free market economist. I don't really know much about him, but I don't think he was on our side. But his point is good here. And so part of what we have to do as movements is wait for moments of crisis to come along so that we can push through change. And we can sometimes manufacture those crises, and we should try, but mostly we can't. But what we need to be doing in the meantime is preparing, is building our power, training people up, growing our networks, developing our ideas so that when the next opportunity opens up, it's there lying around so we can push it through. I think that some of the work we do at 350 PDX can be incremental, super important climate policy, but also just incrementally shifting things. Like stopping Zenith Energy won't end the climate crisis, or it won't even end fossil fuel dominance in Portland. But it puts this big idea constantly on the table that we don't need fossil fuels. We can have the renewable future we need, like right here, right now. And it also lets us grow our power, lets us practice, lets us hone our skills, so that when a time opens up for massive change, it could be the big earthquake, could be a Greta Thunberg moment, it could be a massive school strike, could be some big campaign moment of our own making, then we'll be more ready to push through massive change. So that's an important thing to me anyway. We really have to be doing both. We need to be doing good work right now that achieves concrete change, whilst also growing our people power to be ready to take advantage when opportunities come up.